If you don't submit to control, if you're a radical, you're less likely to be loved. You're not fitting in with society. You're viewed as an outsider. There's a lot of social prohibitions about the outsider and the person who's going to upset things.
From the time we're very young, we're taught to, worship authority basically because that's our key to survival as young children. But as adults, we never go through the rites of passage that tell us how to methodically think for ourselves, and thus we're always in a state of extended adolescence.
Well, we take all this stuff, whether it's the television or it's the enculturation, the schoolyards, the teachers, we take this whole system, we put it into our unconscious mind. And it is the GIGO that comes out, garbage in, garbage out. We simply, in that computer language, have harnessed our own power by accepting all these beliefs as though they are factual, whether it's the flat earth of Columbus, or it's the idea that I'm not good enough to be or to do something I've dreamed to do.
To the degree that the individual loses a sense of what freedom really means for himself, mind control is working. This is the constant battle and the struggle. What does my freedom mean to me? What is it? How deep does it go? How far-reaching is it?
Individuals come already with their rights. They're born with their rights. They're inherent. They're hardwired. They're hardware.
It's tragic. They've lost their sense of the importance of the individual, each individual. We're not animals. We're individuals. We're created in the image of God.
And so what you have is everybody's born into this control structure. Everybody's born into authority. Everyone's born into this situation. But just because you have an authority making decisions for you at some point when you're very young, too young to take care of yourself, doesn't mean you should always cater to authority your whole life.
Fatalism, defeatism, what Bob Marley called mental slavery. That's was a huge thing that he would sing about. How do we emancipate ourselves from mental slavery? Have we moved to that point of such slavery that we're too far gone?
And just kind of letting it all flow by and being apathetic about it just gets you in a position of being controlled.
You know, there are some people that don't care. There are some people that don't know and don't want to know. It is very frightening. If you really look at it, you would be left with the understanding that you were obligated to do something about it. And, people work really hard every day and they just want to relax and enjoy their life.
We have established a framework for the most part, works pretty good. People enter into this contract with society. That contract allows them to follow certain rules and expect certain returns on their investment of working within the framework of the contract.
Secure your copy today at Infowars.com.
So why do people submit to control? I'm going to give you my answer before I hear the filmmakers. You're born into it. You grow up in your diapers in front of the television. They're not even aware of it. And as G.I. Joe says, it's really an old Army saying, knowing is half the battle. James Lane, Mr. Green, I want to get your take as the filmmaker studying this. Why do people submit to being manipulated? For me, it makes me very angry that people are lying and trying to program me, trying to manipulate my free will.
I think one of the biggest aspects of it is the 15,000 hours of compulsory schooling. You know, we're taught not to question, we're taught to accept information on authority and regurgitate useless facts, not how to think, not how to be a person and think critically. That's got to be one of the most integral parts of it.
I mean, really, you know, from my perspective, especially coming from the military background, is that we control ourselves through societal pressures and peer pressures not to go outside of the box, not to be a critical thinker, but to just accept the status quo and go along to get along, not rock that boat. And so, you know, that's what you see in the military, especially, and the rest of the world, is that we're really all policing ourselves for the globalists. They don't have to do much. They've entrained us so much that we pretty much take care of the job.
They set up the parameters, and then we just stay within them. They've done these studies where they've got rats at universities within a steel maze that has little artificial lights and things. They think that's the whole universe. But if they could ever chew their way out, they would realize there's a whole planet around them. And I really think it goes back to Plato's allegory of the cave. Take the military. I find because there's discipline and things in it, people that come out of it and wake up are some of the best folks to work with. But at the same time, those that never wake up are some of the worst and become the enforcers because they are put through sleep deprivation. They are brainwashed. They are yelled at. They are conditioned. And if you look at cult programming, that's what it is. But I guess the Germans did develop in Prussia what is our modern military system, and they admitted it was a brainwashing system.
Absolutely, and that's what you see in our school systems too. I mean, they've just taken that and rolled it right into there, and they treat our children like they're military people. They're training to go to war, and that's probably exactly what they're hoping for.
I think that you know, people want to be part of society. I mean, that's a natural you know, thing that we do. But yet we're not given any other parameters, like you were saying. They don't know anything that's outside of that maze. You know, we're not taught to think critically and have original thought.
They use our natural capacity. They use the fact that we naturally in a tribe want to conform and be friendly as humans and share. They artificially manipulate that.
Yeah, later on in the film, you'll hear Eldon Taylor actually say, you know, at some point you have to ask yourself, when was the last time you had an original thought? And I think that is what a lot of people, it keeps them in that level of control.
Now, this next part of the film, I think may be the most important. It deals with the fact that we're being turned into human resources. You know, we weren't called human resources till the 30s. Human resources. Resources for who? You understand that, ladies and gentlemen? So get ready. Here is how the establishment see us.
Secure your copy today at Infowars.com.
Human beings form habits. At some point in our lives, many of us realize that the lives we are living are not those which we have imagined, but rather lives reflecting others' imaginations, as if we have been unwitting actors in someone else's script. Are we acting out the artificial roles created by others who have successfully harnessed our minds through our habits? To answer that question, one must first learn how the minds of individuals can be harnessed by systems of psychological control. Are the habits reflected by human beings in direct conflict with their needs to survive and thrive in this world? The enormous implications deter many of us from asking these simple questions and finding answers relevant to our daily lives.
If we don't resist all of the different information that comes our way and weigh it and use our own mind instead of what somebody else wants us to think, eventually society would become nothing more than automatons, robots.
The establishment it's protected itself. Unless you submit to the saturation and indoctrination and adopt all its values, you can't get in.
Everyone needs to find out and really think about it. What is going too far? Because all of this is happening so fast, you need to be ahead of the game. They're ahead of the game.
Humans subjugate themselves to control because they're born into it. And the tyrants and the social engineers know how to incrementally begin to slowly ratchet up the manipulation, the domination, the oppression, so that people never really recognize it coming. It's the old analogy of the frog in the boiling pot. You throw a frog into a boiling pot, folks in Louisiana will tell you this, a bullfrog, he'll jump out. But if you put him in a cold pot, turn it on simmer, heat it up slow, he'll boil, and he'll never see it coming.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with group collectivism. And like, go back to John Dewey, you know, he hated the individual. He hated the rugged individualism of Americans. They had to get rid of that. And Carnegie very deeply involved in that. They even talk about getting rid of that, huh? And so I think that when you've been reduced to a member of the group, the collective, whether it's through sensitivity training that teachers have to go through, or whether, you know, it's in your own community, like we have a community-oriented policing system, you know, where they give you a medal if you do a good deed. Well, you know, you're part of the collective with the police.
I would say in the next 50 years, if large numbers of people don't become consciously resistant to the overall mind control exerted on society, we're going to see many more people who really truly resemble androids. People induce this themselves by looking out at the world and saying, it's too dangerous for me to tell the truth or to say what I really believe or express how I really feel. It's much better if I fabricate a completely synthetic personality that's going to sit back here and remain passive. That's how it works.
The idea of short-term gain, basically giving up freedoms. Giving up freedoms is never a good idea.
Since the dawn of time, small groups of human beings have instilled artificial circular limitations on the minds of their subjects through the procession of history. Traditionally, the limitations are imprinted on the servile population through a cunning use of language, instruction, and media for the purposes of conquest, social cohesion, and authoritative order by harnessing the human resources of the broad population. Human history reflects countless stories, regardless of what era you happen to live in, and the common thread throughout these stories is that of the struggle between the state, whatever its form, and the individual, the goal of which is to harness and subsume the individual, willingly or unwillingly, into its group collective.
The role of authority is a predatory system that sees the individual basically as a unit of energy. The first forms of mind control go back to prehistory. And you would simply have a priest class that developed technologies of herbs and medicine and had a value to the tribe. But pretty soon the priest class would start studying the sky and when there were solar and lunar eclipses and would say, hey, the sun's not going to come back on this date unless you make me king or unless you give me total control. And the people would say, okay, we saw the eclipse when you said it was coming. You know, the snake god ate the sun of the moon. What do you want? I want your firstborn child. Sacrifice him to me. Every culture does that.